I absolutely love tactical RPGs and turn-based tactics games. It's like the video game equivalent of chess, and I think it's always been perfect for portable play. Well, I wanted to see just how well this genre performs on Valve's portable powerhouse, the Steam Deck. Hold on to your butts because I've got 24 games to cover, but spoilers, I had a blast doing it. This video is sponsored by SK Hynix, the maker of fastest-in-class SSDs. The new Platinum P41 PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD exhibits technical excellence driven by unmatched speeds and reliability. The Platinum series represents the company's flagship retail lineup geared towards gamers and content creators looking to turbo boost PC performance. Check out the link in the description in order to grab the Platinum P41 today and give your PC a huge upgrade. So before I get to the game, stick with me because I want to point out a few things. First off, while I've had fun emulating classics like Advance Wars and Final Fantasy Tactics on the deck, I wanted to specifically focus on games that are available directly through Steam. There are already some fantastic videos out there concerning emulation on the deck, so go watch channels like ETA Prime or Retro Gamecore for that. When it comes to Steam though, I already had a pretty good list of games to check out, but I also did a ton of digging into the store to see what other games I could find. But keep in mind, while I have been playing a good amount on the Steam Deck, most of these results are from early on in the game and not a definitive look by any stretch. On top of that, updates come quickly on the deck, so this is only a snapshot in time, and performance may improve from what you see. Secondly, I captured all of the B-roll with the Steam Deck frame rate placed at 60 FPS to show full performance. Luckily, this genre does not need high frame rates to enjoy, and most of the time I personally played the games with a capped 30 or 40 frames per second. But rather than showing you that, I wanted to show you the max of what the deck can do to get a better idea of its limits. The last note before we get started is that if you like these kinds of genre breakdowns on the Steam Deck, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to line some more up. While you are down there, be sure to click on that subscribe button for even more awesome PC coverage. Okay, now let's get to the testing in alphabetical order. First up is the Banner Saga, which I've spent a bit of time with on the Switch. It's verified and I didn't run into any problems control or otherwise, so it was a smooth experience. The art style looks fantastic on this screen, and performance wasn't really a problem, though I did see some weird dips in between turns. In my limited time with it, I'd say that this is a good fit for the deck. Next is mech-based BattleTech, which provided more stress on the graphics side. It's listed as unknown compatibility-wise, and didn't have a recommended control layout, so I grabbed a community one that worked well. Performance was surprisingly good. The game was hitting in the 30s at native res with everything cranked to ultra, and in the 40s at the lowest settings. I think the game is playable for sure, but the impressiveness of large mech combat is kinda lost on the small screen. Next up is Dark Deity, a classic-looking 2D game that is marked as verified. It starts with a launcher I had to click through with the touchscreen, and there were some surprisingly long load times, but once I was in the action, it played well. It's a simple enough game, so nothing much else to report here when it concerns the Steam Deck. Next is the classic Disgaea PC version, which currently holds the unknown tag. Despite that, I found no problems to report during the opening tutorial bits other than some random frame time hiccups while at native res with everything cranked. Maybe later in the game the system will get bogged down with lots of characters and effects on screen, but I think it's fairly safe to play it on the deck.
Ah, Prince, we've got company. How convenient.
Fights in tight spaces is verified for the deck and plays well with the controller. Despite its seemingly simple graphics, the frame rate wasn't as stable as I expected. There aren't really any graphical options to mess around with, but luckily it plays fine with a locked 30 frame cap. If I can even wrap my head around the card-based combat, I think this would be a fun one for me to dive into on the deck. Gears Tactics, which is marked as playable, was the very first game I ran a benchmark for when I received my deck. It's in PCWorld's overall suite of game benchmarks, so it was easy for me to compare numbers to other hardware. At native res with settings set to high, the benchmark clocked in at 52 FPS. But when I loaded into my save, the level I was in hung around the mid-40s. There are a ton of graphical options to dig in here though, so I think there is plenty to adjust for your desired performance.
Ammo's low!
Into the Breach was one of my favorite games of 2018 and is marked as verified. It continues to be amazing even on the Steam Deck, with consistent performance and a minimal tax on battery. I think this is a perfect game for handheld play, and if you haven't played it yet, you need to, in any form actually. Invisible Ink is marked as unknown, but in my short time with it, I didn't run into any major problems. Oddly, performance was a bit stuttery even though it's not maxing out the deck's power, but it's easily playable. Honestly, the biggest downside is the complex default control scheme, but with time that can be learned. Möbius Front 83 is tagged as unknown, and I didn't have too much to report on this one. Performance wasn't an issue, but none of the control schemes were really suited for the deck as is, and I didn't have a great time with it. This might be one of those that just needs a mouse and keyboard to play. I've been interested in playing Mutant Year Zero since it came out, but I'm not sure that this is the way I want to play it. At native res, any of the graphical presets under medium looks really bad, but at high settings, it hung around the mid-30s, so it is playable. I didn't have a bad time messing with it, I just feel like I was missing out on the ambiance of the game playing it this way.
Bye-bye. You got it!
Othercide is marked as unsupported, and I dumped over 5 hours into this one and didn't run into any major problems. This game came out of nowhere for me and turned out to be one of the biggest surprises on this list. The mechanics are unique and the vibe is totally up my alley. I'm loving it. Performance is rock solid at max settings, but it does drain the battery without a frame rate cap. Unfortunately, it doesn't have 1280x800 support, but that's the only major downside I could find. I highly recommend checking this one out. It's a great fit for the deck.
Striking.
A friend on Discord alerted me to Phoenix Point, which is marked as playable, and I had a great time trying it out. It's very reminiscent of contemporary XCOM and plays well on the deck, though the controls are a bit complicated. Performance-wise, at native res and max settings, it's usually hovering in the 40 FPS range, so it's a great candidate for locking to 30. Load times are surprisingly long in spots, but other than that, there isn't much else to report. If you are jonesing for XCOM 3, this should tide you over.
Kills confirmed. Phoenix, welcome home.
Next up is Shadowrun Returns, which is currently listed as unknown. I downloaded a great control option from the community and had a good time replaying the opening parts. By default, some of the text is hard to read, so I had to adjust, but it played well and had consistent performance. So barring any major problems I didn't see, I feel like it was a good experience for the deck. Next up is another personal favorite of mine, SteamWorld Heist, which is marked as verified. I beat this on the 3DS when it came out, and in my quick time with it on the deck, it was still a blast. It seems to be a perfect fit for this device, and I'm tempted to play through it yet again. Willis is a huge fan of the Super Robot Wars series, but I've yet to play one. Luckily, this version was verified at the Steam Deck's launch, and seems to be a great way to play it. The default control scheme is kinda weird, but performance is a non-issue on this hardware, so it doesn't tax the battery. One small quirk I noted was that during battle sequences, you can hold down the B button to remove the HUD elements, and the sequence plays out at 60 FPS rather than 30. Regardless, when I get around to this game, I'm definitely playing it on the Steam Deck. Symphony of War is another 2D based throwback like Dark Deity, and it's marked as verified. Like that game, there isn't much to report here other than that when I first loaded it up, it defaulted to a larger pixel count, so I had to fumble a bit to get it into full screen mode. Otherwise, it's a great fit. I've played a good bit of Valkyria Chronicles 4 on the Switch, and this version is only a slight visual improvement with higher frame rates. It's marked as verified on the deck, and I had no problem getting back into the swing of things. Its performance was pretty steady at 720p and maxed out settings, but alas, there is no support for the taller aspect ratio here. Either way, the deck seems like a great place to play it. Wargroove is marked as playable on the deck, but apart from a couple quirks, I had no troubles playing the first couple missions. The art looks fabulous, performance was fantastic, and it's easy on the battery, so I think this is a great place to play it. I beat it on the Switch when it came out, so I don't think I'll go through it again, but if you are a fan of Advance Wars or Fire Emblem, I think it's worth a look. I'll be the first to admit I know nothing about Warhammer, but it doesn't matter. I've had an absolute blast playing Warhammer 40,000 Chaos Gate Daemonhunters, and I'm not afraid to admit it. It's marked as unsupported due to performance issues, and I can attest to that. It runs real bad on the deck. Hell, it actually runs real bad on a 3080 Ti as well, but that hasn't stopped me from logging in over 15 hours on this game. I have no idea why I can't put it down even though it performs horribly. I can't really recommend it in the state it is now, so hopefully the developer can deal with the performance soon, because this is a fun game.
A man cannot stand before us.
Warhammer 40k Mechanicus is listed as verified though, but it's very different than Chaos Gate Daemonhunters, and I haven't really got sucked in the same way. Regardless, it does play very well on this device, and it has some unique mechanics that are worth checking out if you can. Other than Warhammer, Wasteland 3 is the other game I've played a ton of on the Steam Deck, and it's an absolute blast. It's only marked as playable, but performance is pretty steady at native res and graphics set to high. I did have to up the text size to help read the small print, as it was one of the smallest I've tried on the deck so far. The biggest problem I ran into was that I couldn't access my cloud saves on another PC, meaning I couldn't pick up gameplay somewhere else. It's able to sync from a different PC to the deck, so I'm not sure what the problem is, and it's been frustrating the hell out of me. I'm not sure if this is a game problem or a Steam problem, so if you have any ideas, please let me know. I've heard a lot about Wildermyth, but I've yet to play it before this. It's marked as playable, and I didn't run into any major issues. On top of that, performance was stable and it's easy on the battery. I didn't put a ton of time into this one, but from what I saw, I think it's a great fit for the deck. XCOM 2 and its War of the Chosen DLC is some of the best tactics gameplay out there, and I was really hoping it would translate well to the Steam Deck. It's marked as playable, but I struggled for a while to find a control layout that I liked, and I never did get it ironed out. There's a way to toggle inputs between mouse and keyboard and controller in the menus, but it's grayed out and not recognizing the Steam Deck as a controller, so that's a major issue right there. If I'm able to figure out how to get a good setup, I'll leave a comment below, but as it stands now, I didn't have fun playing it. It's a bummer because I was looking forward to replaying this on the Steam Deck, so my hopes were really high. Luckily, performance wasn't too much of an issue when playing at native res and the settings set to medium, though it's definitely not much of a looker this way.
They're moving to flank me!
And finally, we have Chimera Squad, which is also listed as playable, but I didn't have the same control problems as with XCOM 2. Performance was a bit better as well thanks to the smaller combat encounters, so that was a nice bonus. Playing it on the deck wasn't the perfect way to do it, but it was fun enough. I feel like I'm more positive on this XCOM title than others, so I think it's worth a play, but just know it's a different beast than XCOM 2.
Melting hardware.
Softened up.
Oh, yikes. That was a huge list of tactical RPGs and turn-based tactics games. I can't believe you made it all the way through it with me. To finish up, I feel like this genre is way more predictable when it comes to performance and not much of a concern for the Steam Deck. Control issues were more of a problem, but to a certain degree that comes down to personal preference, so it's hard to quantify. But what do you think? Will you be loading any of these games up on your Steam Deck? Did I miss a game that you think I should try out? Either way, let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe here on PCWorld for more PC hardware and software goodness.